My wife had just left for her sister's wedding, when my 6-year-old daughter crawled into bed and whispered, "Daddy, we have to leave now." I asked, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" She sobbed. "Mommy changed the locks yesterday. She told me we'd be orphans by morning." I rushed to the doors, everyone was locked. Then the smell of gas filled the air, and the doorbell rang. I never thought my life would shatter over a 6-year-old's playground fight. But that day, it didn't just shatter. It exploded, revealing a betrayal so deep, so cold, it would redefine every single thing I thought I knew about family and loyalty. And let me tell you, when you're a man like me, betrayal isn't just an offense. It's a death sentence for the traitors. ***, my name's John Pierce. For 42 years, I'd built Pierce Security Solutions into the best damn private security firm in the Northeast. My reputation? Built on two things. Absolute loyalty and devastating retribution for anyone who dared cross me. From my office overlooking Boston Harbor, I saw everything. Or so I thought. One rainy afternoon, the phone rang. My personal line. Only 3 people had that number. "Pierce," I answered, my voice already on edge. It was Detective Rodriguez. "Mr. Pierce, there's been an incident at your children's school. We need you to come down." My heart dropped into my stomach. 20 minutes later, I was striding through Beacon Academy, my overcoat still slick with rain. Principal Wallace met me, wringing his hands, rambling about how this wasn't typical. "Where's my daughter?" I cut him off, my voice like ice. He led me to a small room. There sat my 6-year-old Lucy, her strawberry blonde hair matted with dried blood. Across from her, a boy with a broken arm sobbed, his mother fussing over him. The other boy called Lucy names about her mother, Principal Wallace explained nervously. Things got physical. Mrs. Donnelly claims Lucy started it. I didn't even look at him. "Tell Detective Rodriguez I want the security footage." My eyes locked on Lucy's. Hers met mine unblinking. "What did he say, sweetheart?" Her small fists clenched. "He said Mommy was a bad word, that she sleeps with lots of men." I told him to shut up. He pushed me. I pushed back. He cried and lied. A fierce protective pride swelled in my chest. Lucy had my fire. She wouldn't be intimidated. I put my hand on her shoulder. "You did right, Lucy." Mrs. Donnelly, the sobbing boy's mother, stepped forward, her face flushed with indignation. "How dare you encourage this behavior? Your daughter broke my Timothy's arm." My gaze fixed on her and she actually took a step back. "Your son," I told her, my voice low and steady, "will learn today that words have consequences. Consider his arm an inexpensive lesson." That evening, I returned to our brownstone in Beacon Hill, a fortress really designed with my own security systems. My wife, Margaret, sat in the drawing room sipping wine, classical music playing softly. "How's Lucy?" she asked without turning. "She'll be fine," I replied. "Handled herself like a Pierce." Her lips tightened, almost imperceptibly. "I heard about the incident." "Really, John, couldn't you have been more diplomatic with Mrs. Donnelly? Her husband sits on the school board." I scoffed, pouring myself a scotch. "I don't care if her husband sits on the throne of England. No one speaks about my family that way." Finally, Margaret turned, her blue eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "Your family? Sometimes I wonder if you remember I'm part of it too." That hit me. We'd met when she was a struggling art curator, and I was just starting Pierce Security. I'd been drawn to her sophistication, her grace, everything I lacked from my rough South Boston upbringing. Now, 12 years and 2 children later, I wondered if I'd mistaken calculation for charm. "Oh," she added, standing up, "I almost forgot. My sister Victoria's wedding is next weekend. The family cottage in the Berkshires." I nodded absently. The Colemans, Margaret's family, had old money, the kind that whispered, never shouted. They'd never quite approved of me, a security contractor. "Will you be able to get away from work?" she asked. "I'll try." The next week was a blur of meetings. We just landed a massive account, protecting a billionaire family from kidnapping attempts. I threw myself into work, barely noticing Margaret's increased absences, or her sudden intense interest in her appearance. Then Friday evening arrived. I came home to find Margaret in the master bedroom, packing an overnight bag. She wore a new dress, deep green silk I didn't recognize. "You're leaving already?" I asked, checking my watch. "I thought the ceremony wasn't until tomorrow afternoon." "Victoria needs help with last-minute preparations," she said, zipping her bag with unnecessary force. "I'll take Lucy with me. You can follow tomorrow morning with William, assuming you can tear yourself away from work." I studied her reflection in the mirror. Something felt off, the timing, her attitude, the way she avoided eye contact. But I pushed the feeling aside. Paranoia was an occupational hazard in my line of work. "Safe travels," I said as they departed in a hired car. I spent the evening reviewing security footage, then headed to bed around midnight. I checked on William, my 12-year-old, who was engrossed in a comic book. "Lights out in 30, champ." "Dad," he looked up. "Is Mom acting weird to you?" I paused. "How do you mean?" "I don't know, different. Like she's hiding something." From the mouths of babes, I thought. Adults are complicated sometimes. Don't worry about it. I ruffled his hair and retired to my empty bedroom. Sleep wouldn't come. Then around 2 a.m. I woke. Lucy was crawling into bed beside me, her small body trembling. Daddy, she whispered. We need to leave now. I was instantly alert. What's going on, sweetheart? Tears streamed down her face. Mommy changed the locks yesterday. She said we'd be orphans by morning. Ice flooded my veins. Lucy, what exactly did Mommy say? She was on the phone in her bathroom. I heard her say, by morning they'll all be gone. Her voice broke. She said to make sure the gas was on high, and all the doors were locked. My training kicked in. I swung out of bed, tried the door handle. Wouldn't turn. Tried the bedroom windows. Sealed shut from the outside. My master suite, designed as a safe room, had become my prison. Stay calm, baby, I told Lucy, though my own heart raced. The faint smell of gas reached my nostrils. My phone lay on the nightstand. I dialed 911. Nothing. No signal. Signal jammer, I realized. Margaret had been thorough. Think. I moved to my dresser, retrieving the emergency toolkit hidden in a false bottom. Lock picks, glass cutter, portable signal booster, tools of my trade. As I worked on the door's locking mechanism, Lucy huddled on the bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Daddy, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay. The lock clicked open. I eased the door wide, listening. The house was silent, except for that distant hiss of gas. I crept to William's room, locked from the outside. Another safety feature I'd installed myself now turned against me. I picked it quickly and found him sleeping soundly. William. I shook him awake. Emergency drill. Move. Years of training paid off. He rose, instantly alert. I herded both children to the main staircase, but found it blocked by a security gate. Another of my own installations. Then the doorbell rang. I froze. 2:30 a.m. Only one reason for a visitor. Stay behind me. I moved to the front door security panel and activated the exterior camera. 2 men in dark clothing stood on my porch, their faces obscured. Through enhanced audio, I heard one speak into a radio. Target should be neutralized. Entering now for confirmation. Understanding clicked into place. Margaret wasn't at her sister's wedding. This was an elaborate murder plot. These men were here to ensure the job was done. My mind raced. The house's security system was designed to keep people out, not in. Margaret must have had help. Someone who knew the system, knew my routines, knew my weaknesses. Daddy, Lucy whispered. What do we do? I smiled cold and hard. We survive. And then we make them pay. I led my children to the kitchen, where I'd installed a secondary exit, a tunnel leading to the wine cellar of a neighboring abandoned building. It had been my insurance policy against exactly this kind of scenario. As we crawled through the passage, explosions rocked the house behind us. They triggered the gas. I shielded my children with my body, feeling the heat of the blast. We emerged in the dusty wine cellar, coughing and covered in soot. I used my backup phone to call for help, then held my children close. Mom tried to kill us, William said, his voice hollow with shock. Yes, I confirmed. I wouldn't lie to them. But she failed. And that was her first mistake. The Pierce brownstone burned through the night, fire trucks and police cars lighting up Beacon Hill. I watched from across the street, my children wrapped in blankets from the EMTs. To the world, the Pierce family had perished in a tragic accident. But I had other plans. Detective Rodriguez approached, genuine concern on his face. Mr. Pierce, I can't tell you how sorry I am. We thought the 911 call came from your security system about a gas leak. We weren't in time. You received a 911 call? I asked carefully. Automated. Your system sent an alert about a gas leak at 2:45 a.m. Perfect. Someone had programmed my own system to create an alibi. I filed that information away. Detective, I said quietly, I need a favor. I need the world to think we died in that fire. Rodriguez's eyes widened. Sir, think about it. Someone tried to murder my entire family tonight. Someone with inside knowledge of my security systems. Until I know who, my children aren't safe. He studied my face, then nodded. Give me an hour. By dawn the story was set. The Pierce family. Casualties of a tragic gas leak and subsequent explosion. Bodies too badly burned for identification. A tragedy that would rock Boston's elite. I took my children to a safe house, an apartment I'd maintained under an alias for exactly this purpose. As William and Lucy slept, exhausted from their ordeal, I began working my contacts. First call. Raymond Delgado, my head of operations, one of the few people I trusted completely. Boss, thank God you're alive, Raymond said, his voice thick with emotion. The news, we thought. Let the world keep thinking it. I cut in. Someone tried to erase us, Ray. I need you to find out who. Where do I start? Margaret. Her phone records, banking movements. And find out about this sister's wedding. The Coleman family cottage. On it. My second call went to an old friend from my SYS days, Tommy Russo. Now a private investigator with questionable ethics, but absolute loyalty to me. Tommy, I need you to tail someone, I said. Margaret Pierce. She thinks she's a widow. Tommy's gravelly laugh came through the phone. Funny thing about widows, Johnny. They tend to show their true colors pretty quick. Over the next 3 days, information trickled in. Margaret had indeed gone to the Coleman cottage, but there was no wedding. Instead, she'd met with Vincent Caldwell, a young architect I'd never heard of. Tommy's surveillance photos showed them embracing passionately, Margaret wearing black mourning clothes. The bank records revealed something more sinister. Margaret had been siphoning money from our accounts for months, transferring it to an offshore account. But it wasn't just embezzlement. It was the oldest motive in the world. Greed and a new lover. My final piece of intelligence came from my security firm's IT department. Someone had hacked the Pierce Mansion security system remotely. Not just anyone, but someone with administrative access. Only 5 people had those credentials. Myself, Raymond, and 3 trusted engineers. I eliminated Raymond immediately. That left 3 possibilities. I had Stephanie Vega, my best interrogator, invite each engineer for a routine security review. Within hours, she confirmed my suspicion. Simon Burke, the youngest engineer, had been compromised. He cracked like an egg, Stephanie reported. Some woman seduced him at a tech conference, pretended to be interested in his work, got him drunk, drugged, and turned him. Blackmail pictures. Description. Red hair, mid-30s, professional looking. Margaret's sister. Victoria. The picture crystallized. This wasn't just about murder. It was about taking everything, the house, the children, the business, the fortune. Margaret and her lover had planned to eliminate me and take it all. But they'd made one critical error. They'd left Lucy alive. To warn me. I gathered my children in the safe house living room. William and Lucy looked at me with tired eyes, asking questions I needed to answer. Mom tried to kill us, William stated flatly. Why? I sat facing them, speaking with absolute honesty. Because she wanted everything I've built, and she wanted to be with another man. She chose greed and betrayal over family. What happens now? Lucy asked. I smiled coldly. Now the dead man walks. The funeral was everything Margaret could have hoped for. Boston's elite turned out to mourn the tragic loss of the Pierce family. Margaret played her part perfectly. The grieving widow in designer black, accepting condolences with quiet dignity. From a surveillance van half a block away, I watched with cold satisfaction. Margaret had chosen the most expensive caskets, wept convincingly as they were lowered into the ground, and delivered a eulogy that would have moved anyone who didn't know the truth. She's good, Tommy Russo commented, adjusting the camera angle. Almost had me believing her. My jaw tightened. Beside Margaret stood Vincent Caldwell, pretending to be a family friend, offering support. The man placed a hand on her shoulder with proprietary familiarity. Tommy, I said, I want to learn everything about him. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my case like a master architect. Vincent Caldwell, it turned out, was more than just a pretty face with an architecture degree from Yale. He had a history, expensive tastes, failed businesses, and a pattern of targeting wealthy older women. Through Tommy's investigation, I learned that Vincent had met Margaret at a charity gala 6 months ago. Their affair had started immediately, passionate and reckless. Vincent had convinced Margaret that I was holding her back, that with my death she could truly live. The insurance payout alone was $20 million. But there was an unexpected twist. The deeper I dug, the more connections I found between Vincent and the Colemans. Victoria Coleman wasn't just Margaret's sister. She was Vincent's ex-girlfriend. From college. The entire family had been in on the plot. They're all dirty, Raymond reported during a secure call. Victoria married into the Coleman money, but she squandered it. They were facing bankruptcy. This was supposed to save them. My children adjusted to their new reality with remarkable resilience. I'd enrolled them in a small private school under assumed names, telling them this was temporary. They understood in their own way that their father was hunting. One evening, Lucy climbed into my lap as I worked at my computer. Daddy, when we catch the bad people, what happens to us? I hugged her tight. We go home, baby. We get our life back. But different, William added from across the room. At 12, he understood more than his sister. We can't go back to before. No, I agreed. But we can build something better. Margaret's true nature revealed itself in the weeks following the funeral. She moved quickly to take control of Pierce Security Solutions, presenting herself as my widow and heir. The board of directors, unaware of her true role, offered condolences and cooperation. But I had prepared for this contingency. Hidden clauses in the company bylaws required my personal approval for any ownership transfer. Margaret found herself hitting legal walls, her frustration growing. She's getting sloppy, Raymond observed during one of our daily briefings. Making mistakes. Good, I replied. The rope's almost ready. My patience paid off when Margaret made her first fatal error. Believing herself secure in her deception, she hosted a small gathering at a downtown hotel, a private memorial for me, with select friends and business associates. Vincent Caldwell attended as her date. I watched the event unfold through strategically placed cameras. Margaret laughed too freely, touched Vincent too intimately. They retired to her suite early, unaware they were being recorded. Phase 1 complete, I told Raymond. Time to let them know I'm alive. The next morning, Margaret received a package at the brownstone, now her property. Inside was a single photograph. John, William, and Lucy very much alive, taken the previous day. No message, no threat. Just proof that the dead man walked. My phone rang within the hour. A burner number, but I knew who it was. John. Margaret's voice trembled. John, is that you? Hello, Margaret, I said calmly. Her intake of breath was audible. Where are you? Close. Watching. Learning. I paused. Nice memorial service, by the way. Vincent seems to have gotten over his grief quickly. Silence. Then, what do you want? Justice, I replied. And believe me, you're going to beg for death before I'm done. The line went dead. Fear made them reckless. Within hours of my call, Margaret contacted Vincent, who reached out to the Colemans, who panicked and made calls of their own. My team intercepted everything. They're planning to run, Stephanie reported, trying to access the offshore accounts, which I already emptied. I smiled grimly. Tommy shadowed them. I want to know every move. Margaret's world unraveled rapidly. The bank accounts she'd carefully hidden were frozen. Questions arose about the insurance claim. Creditors appeared, demanding payments she couldn't make. I applied pressure systematically. Anonymous tips to the IRS questioned the Colemans' finances. The SEC received information about Vincent's fraudulent business dealings. Each day brought new problems, new fears. I watched them scramble, observed their true characters emerge under pressure. Vincent turned on Margaret, blaming her for the botched assassination. Margaret lashed out at the Colemans for their incompetence. The family alliance fractured like watching rats fight over a sinking ship. Tommy observed with satisfaction, but I wasn't satisfied with financial ruin or legal troubles. I wanted something more personal. The opportunity came when Simon Burke, the compromised engineer, contacted Margaret in desperation. She'd been paying him to stay quiet, but now the money had dried up. Simon threatened to go to the police with everything he knew. Margaret agreed to meet him at an abandoned warehouse in Southie, a location that meant something to me. It was where my father had taught me to fight, where I'd learned that mercy was weakness. I got there first. Simon Burke arrived, nervous and alone, carrying a laptop with copies of all the incriminating evidence. He never saw me step from the shadows. The confrontation was brief but educational. Simon learned the price of betrayal firsthand. When Margaret arrived, she found Simon unconscious, tied to a chair, and me waiting. Hello, Margaret, I said, stepping into the light. Let's have that talk. Her perfect composure shattered. She backed away, fumbling for her phone, but I had blocked all signals. You can't, you're dead, she stammered. No, I'm very much alive thanks to Lucy. My voice was ice. She heard your plans. She warned me. My 6-year-old daughter saved us all while you tried to murder your own children. Margaret's face went white. I never meant to hurt the children. I needed freedom money. A new life with Vincent. I circled her like a predator. You could have divorced me. Instead, you chose murder. Vincent said it was the only way. He said that the Colemans would help, that you'd all be rich, that no one would suspect a thing. I nodded. I know everything, Margaret. Every detail. The offshore accounts, the security breach, the gas leak. Simon here was very helpful filling in the gaps. Margaret looked at the unconscious engineer, then back at me. What are you going to do? Justice, I replied. But not the kind the courts offer. You want me dead? You'll wish I was. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Margaret and Vincent planning the murder, discussing how to dispose of the bodies, laughing about the insurance money. I could send this to the police, I said. Let you rot in prison. But prison's too kind. I want you to feel what I felt when I realized my wife tried to murder our children. Margaret began to cry, but I remained unmoved. I'd seen her cry before, use tears as weapons to get her way. Tomorrow night, I continued, you'll go to the Beacon Hotel. Tell Vincent to meet you there. Tell the Colemans to come to a family meeting to discuss the crisis. The details will be in this envelope. I handed her a sealed package. Be there at 9 o'clock. And Margaret. I paused as she looked up, makeup streaked with tears. If you run, if you warn them, or if you don't show up, your families will receive something far worse than this recording. The Beacon Hotel's top floor was reserved for a private dinner party. 6 people sat around a gleaming table, Margaret and Vincent, Victoria and her husband Charles Coleman, and a distinguished older couple I'd introduced as the Harringtons, wealthy socialites with mysterious connections to peer security solutions. Each person had their own reason for attending. Margaret came out of fear. Vincent, hoping to salvage his relationship with a suddenly impoverished widow. The Colemans, seeking any way to recover their finances. Even they didn't know why I had invited the Harringtons. As dessert was served, the lights dimmed. A screen descended from the ceiling. "Good evening." My voice boomed through the speakers. The conspirators jumped. "Before we begin, I have a short film to share." The screen lit up with crystal clear footage. Vincent and Victoria in college, planning their first scam. Margaret siphoning money from various accounts. The Colemans discussing how to fake their business failure. Every betrayal, every lie, every cold discussion of murder. All captured in perfect detail. Margaret rose to flee, but the doors had locked. Vincent cursed and pounded on the walls. The Colemans sat in stunned silence. "I'm giving you a choice," my voice continued. "Option 1. I send this footage to every news station, every police department, every business associate you've ever had. Your lives as you know them end tonight." Victoria sobbed openly. Charles Coleman aged 10 years before my eyes. Vincent turned to Margaret with hatred in his eyes. "This is your fault." "Option 2, I said, as the lights rose and I stepped through a door none of them had noticed, impeccably dressed, radiating cold authority. Behind me stood the Harringtons. Actually senior FBI agents who'd been investigating the Colemans for years. "You play a game. My game. By the rules I set." "What kind of game?" Charles Coleman asked hoarsely. I smiled without warmth. "Musical chairs. With a twist." I produced 6 envelopes, placing one before each person. Each envelope contains a different fate. Immunity, prison time, financial ruin, or... I paused dramatically. "Special arrangements for the truly deserving. You'll take turns selecting from the remaining envelopes. One of you will emerge relatively unscathed. The others? Well, you've earned what's coming." "This is insane," Vincent shouted. "You can't." "Can't what?" I cut him off, my voice still. "Expose your crimes? Ruin your lives like you tried to ruin mine? Watch as you destroy each other." "I absolutely can. And I will." For the next hour they played. Each revelation in the envelopes turned them against each other. Victoria learned that Vincent was already planning to betray Margaret for another wealthy widow. Charles discovered his wife had stolen from their personal accounts. Vincent found evidence that Margaret had considered having him killed after my death. By the end, they were a pack of wolves, each willing to sacrifice the others to save themselves. Margaret and Victoria's sisterly bond evaporated. Vincent punched Charles in a desperate attempt to steal his envelope. The Colemans wept as generations of family legacy crumbled. I watched it all with satisfaction. This was justice. Not the clean, simple variety of courts and prisons, but the raw truth of betrayers destroying each other. Finally, only one envelope remained. Margaret's. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was a single document. Divorce papers and a custody agreement granting me full rights to our children. "Your immunity from prosecution requires 3 signatures," I explained. "Yours, mine, and a judge's. You keep your freedom, Margaret, but you lose everything else. Your children will know exactly what you are. Your name will be dirt in the circles you once moved in. You'll live, but you'll wish you hadn't. As for the others, Vincent faces charges for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. The Colemans will spend years fighting financial crimes allegations. Their privileged world had ended." I turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Simon Burke? He's already talking to the FBI. Apparently, attempted murder is a powerful motivator for cooperation." The next morning, I returned to my children at the safe house. They had watched the entire night's events on secure video feed, at my insistence. William and Lucy needed to understand the depths of betrayal and the price of justice. "Is it over?" Lucy asked. "Almost," I replied, pulling them close. "We have one more thing to do." We drove to Pierce Security Solutions headquarters. Word had spread that John Pierce was alive. Employees cheered as I walked in with my children. Raymond met us at the elevators, tears in his eyes. "Welcome home, boss." I addressed the assembled staff personally, thanking them for their loyalty during the crisis. I explained that those who'd betrayed me had been dealt with. Pierce Security would emerge stronger. Later in my office, I found a package on my desk. Inside was Lucy's lucky rabbit, slightly singed from the fire, and a note from Detective Rodriguez. Asterisk found this in the ruins. Thought she might want it back. Asterisk that evening I took my children to dinner at their favorite restaurant. They'd grown in these weeks, harder, wiser, but not broken. "Dad," William said over dessert, "are we safe now?" I considered the question carefully. Safer than before. But remember what you've learned. Trust carefully, watch constantly, and never let your guard down. Lucy hugged her rescued rabbit close. "And family protects family," she added. I smiled proudly. Exactly. The aftermath of my revenge spread like wildfire through Boston's social circles. Margaret lived in isolation, shunned by the very society she'd craved. Her daily existence became a punishment, watching her children thrive without her, seeing her former friends cross the street to avoid her, receiving photos of her ex-husband's success. It was a slow, agonizing demise for her reputation and spirit. Vincent Caldwell learned about survival the hard way. Federal prison awaited, but first came the street justice. My reputation meant certain people took interest in the man who tried to murder me. Vincent discovered that even without my direct action, I could make prison a nightmare. He never emerged a free man, dying at 57, shanked in the prison yard. The report cited gang violence, but those who knew understood it was the final payment on a debt 20 years old. Even from beyond the grave, I had reached out one last time. The Colemans fared no better. The family's centuries-old businesses crumbled under investigation. Charles and Victoria's marriage dissolved in bitter lawsuits. Their privileged world ended. The Coleman name, once synonymous with Boston's elite, disappeared entirely. Their mansion was converted to condos, their businesses sold piece by piece. Their legacy erased. They faced worse than prison, the absolute destruction of everything they'd built. Simon Burke, the engineer who betrayed my security systems, lived out his sentence in terror. Every day brought new threats, mysterious accidents, and constant reminders that my reach extended even there. Upon release, he'd attempted to start fresh in California, but my network followed him. No job lasted, no relationship survived. He finally settled in a small town in Maine, living under an assumed name, jumping at shadows and checking his locks obsessively. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who disabled my security now lived in perpetual fear of unprotected doors. Margaret's fate, perhaps, was the cruelest. After Vincent's imprisonment and her family's destruction, she lived another 13 years. Unable to face Boston society, she fled to Europe, changing locations whenever rumors of her identity surfaced. The photos I'd arranged to be sent continued throughout her life. Lucy's graduation, William's wedding, the grandchildren she'd never meet. Each image a reminder of what she'd lost by choosing greed over family. She died in a small apartment in Prague, discovered days later by neighbors who knew her only as that sad American woman. A letter she'd written to Lucy and William, begging forgiveness, was found unsent. Lucy burned it unread. When the Czech authorities finally tracked down her address, Detective Rodriguez lived to 95, retiring as Boston's longest-serving homicide detective. He carried the secret of my survival to his grave, occasionally visiting me to discuss old cases and new threats. His grandson now worked for Pierce Security Solutions. Tommy Russo, my trusty private investigator, operated until his death at 88. His detective agency merged with Pierce Security, and his children continued the tradition of absolute loyalty to the Pierce family. Tommy's funeral saw criminals and law enforcement alike paying respects, united in their awe of a man who'd never betrayed a friend. Raymond Delgado succeeded me as head of Pierce Security Solutions, running it for 20 years before passing it to William. The company expanded globally, becoming the world's premier security firm. Every employee signed my famous loyalty clause. Betray a Pierce client, face consequences that make prison seem merciful. Lucy's career path surprised no one. After MIT, she joined the FBI, specializing in corporate espionage and white-collar crime. Her methods were her father's, ruthless, thorough, and creative. Criminals called her the Ice Queen, unaware she took it as a compliment. Her closure rate exceeded 90%, and stories of suspects confessing rather than face her interrogation techniques became urban legend. At 35, she met David Campbell, a federal prosecutor as uncompromising as she was. Their marriage merged two aggressive bloodlines, producing twin terrors who now tugged at her coat. She resigned from the bureau to focus on the family business and family justice. William followed a different path but with the same purpose. After Harvard Law, he revolutionized Pierce Security's legal department. His specialization was destroying enemies through systematic legal warfare, lawsuits, injunctions, and investigations that left targets broken and bankrupt. He married Margaret Soles, a federal judge, expanding the family's influence throughout the justice system. Together, the siblings built an empire that enforced my philosophy. Loyalty is rewarded, betrayal is annihilated. 10 years after the night that almost destroyed him, John Pierce sat in his office, watching his now 18-year-old daughter give her MIT valedictorian speech via video feed. Lucy had his eyes, his drive, his unwavering principles. A knock interrupted his pride. Detective Rodriguez entered, older but still sharp. "Thought you'd want to know," Rodriguez said. "Margaret's heart gave out yesterday. Natural causes." John felt nothing. "The children know? They were listed as next of kin. You want me to handle it?" "No. I'll tell them tonight." John turned back to the video. Lucy was talking about justice, about standing up to evil. His eyes burned with fierce pride. Rodriguez lingered. "For what it's worth, John, what you did that night, some might call it extreme." John's smile was cold. "I don't care what some people think. They weren't the ones who smelled gas while their family slept. They weren't the ones who heard their 6-year-old daughter whisper that her mother planned to make them orphans." The detective nodded. "Just wanted you to know. I never doubted you made the right call." After Rodriguez left, John opened his desk drawer and pulled out his personal journal. He'd kept it since that night, documenting everything. Not for the courts or history, but for his children. He wrote to William and Lucy, "When you read this, I'll be gone. But know this truth. I regret nothing. Every action I took after that night was necessary. Your mother and those who betrayed us learned that mercy is earned, not given. You've become everything I hoped for. Strong, uncompromising, loyal to those who deserve it. You understand that justice isn't always legal, but it's always necessary. Remember, family protects family. Always. And to those who cross us, give them no quarter. Show them no mercy. Let them serve as reminders that betrayal has a price. Forever yours, Dad. That evening, John gathered his family in their new home. William was home from college for the weekend. Lucy would join him at MIT after her graduation. I have news, John announced. Margaret passed away yesterday. The silence stretched. Then Lucy asked, should we feel something? John looked at his children, strong, whole, unbroken by their mother's betrayal. Only relief, he replied. Relief that she can never hurt us again. William raised his glass. To family. To justice, Lucy added. To those who earned our trust, John finished. And to those who didn't, may they rot in whatever hell they found. They drank. 3 warriors who'd survived betrayal and emerged stronger. Outside, Boston glittered in the night, unaware that in a fortress on Beacon Hill, the Pierce family had just written the final chapter of their testament. A testament written in blood, sealed in vengeance and passed down as legacy. Never forgive. Never forget. And never let betrayal go unpunished. The dead man had walked, and justice had been served. 23 years after Margaret's death, Lucy Pierce Campbell stood before her father's grave in Mount Auburn Cemetery. The morning Boston air was crisp, carrying the scent of early spring blossoms. At 42, she was the spitting image of John. Same intense green eyes, same uncompromising stance. Her twin sons, just 6 years old, hugged her legs, eerily reminiscent of her own childhood. Tell us the story again, Mama, asked Nathan, the older twin by 3 minutes. About how Grandpa made the bad people pay, added Noah. Lucy smiled, running a hand through Nathan's hair. Later, my loves. First, we pay our respects. She placed fresh flowers on John's grave. He'd lived to 92, sharp until the very end, watching over his growing dynasty of Pierces. When the heart attack finally claimed him, Lucy had been holding his hand, promising to continue his legacy. Miss you, Dad, she whispered. You'd be proud. The sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. William, now a distinguished 68, strode down the path. Her brother had aged gracefully, his silver hair and expensive suit speaking to his success. Beside him walked his daughter, Samantha, and her teenage son, the next generation of Pierces. You're early, William said, embracing his sister. The boys wanted to hear the story. William knelt beside his nephews. Did you know your Grandpa John was the greatest man who ever lived? Because he made the bad people sorry? Asked Noah. Exactly, William replied. And he taught us that family comes first. Always. As the family gathered around John's grave, Lucy's mind drifted to the others who played parts in their father's tale. Their fates had become Pierce family legend, cautionary tales passed down to each new generation. Vincent Caldwell never emerged from prison a free man. John's influence ensured his transfer to maximum security, where his good looks and privileged background marked him as prey. The man who once charmed wealthy widows learned about true fear in those concrete walls. But prison was just the beginning. John had arranged for depositions to be taken from Vincent's fellow inmates, sealed testimonies to be released in installments throughout his sentence. Each month, new humiliations surfaced. Stories of weakness, of weeping, of desperate attempts to buy protection. His reputation destroyed, forgotten by the world outside, Vincent became a ghost. He died at 57, shanked in the prison yard. The report cited gang violence, but those who knew understood it was the final payment on a debt 20 years old. John, even from beyond the grave, had reached out one last time. The Colemans suffered differently. Victoria developed early-onset Alzheimer's, her mind crumbling like her family's fortune. In her lucid moments, she relived her betrayal of Margaret, crying for forgiveness that never came. She died in a state hospital alone and broke, whispering warnings about the Pierce revenge. Charles Coleman lasted longer but suffered more. The IRS investigation exposed decades of tax fraud, stripping away the family's remaining wealth. His children disowned him, and his friends abandoned him. He took his own life in a motel room, leaving only a note. John Pierce was right about justice. The Coleman name, once synonymous with Boston's elite, disappeared entirely. Their mansion was converted to condos, their businesses sold piecemeal, their legacy erased as John had promised. They faced worse than prison, the absolute destruction of everything they'd built. Simon Burke, the engineer who betrayed John's security systems, lived out his sentence in terror. Every day brought new threats, mysterious accidents, and constant reminders that John's reach extended even here. Upon release, he'd attempted to start fresh in California, but John's network followed him. No job lasted, no relationship survived. He finally settled in a small town in Maine, living under an assumed name, jumping at shadows and checking his locks obsessively. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who disabled John's security now lived in perpetual fear of unprotected doors. Margaret's fate, perhaps, was the cruelest. After Vincent's imprisonment and the family's destruction, she lived another 13 years. Unable to face Boston society, she fled to Europe, changing locations whenever rumors of her identity surfaced. The photos John had arranged to be sent continued throughout her life. Lucy's graduation, William's wedding, the grandchildren she'd never meet. Each image a reminder of what she'd lost by choosing greed over family. She died in a small apartment in Prague, discovered days later by neighbors who knew her only as that sad American woman. The letter she'd written to Lucy and William begging forgiveness was found unsent. Lucy burned it unread. When the Czech authorities finally tracked down her address, the twins stepped back from the grave. "Tell the story now," they asked together. Lucy and William exchanged glances. Some Pierce traditions needed preserving. They settled on a nearby bench, the family gathering close. The boys sat at Lucy's feet as she began the tale their father had told them decades ago. "Long ago, your grandfather trusted someone he shouldn't have." As Lucy spoke, she watched her son's reactions. Nathan's jaw clenched at the mention of Margaret's betrayal. He had John's temper. Noah's eyes went cold discussing the planned murder. He had that pure Pierce intensity. When she described John's revenge, both boys nodded approvingly. "What's the moral?" Nathan asked when she finished. "Family above all," William answered. "And justice always," added Samantha. "Never forgive betrayal," Noah concluded, unconsciously echoing John's own words. Lucy felt her father's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. Yes, they understood. The legacy lived on. Later, at the Pierce family compound, a modernized fortress in Beacon Hill, the gathering continued. Extended family filled the house: cousins, spouses, children, and grandchildren, all bound by blood and John's fierce principles. In the study, Lucy found an old file hidden behind her father's books. His handwriting covered the yellowed pages, a journal entry from 50 years ago. Asterisk, each generation must face betrayal. Each must choose between forgiveness and justice. I chose justice. Let my children choose wisely. Asterisk, she smiled. They'd chosen justice. All of them. And they'd passed that choice to their own children. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Tommy Russo III entered, now 47 and head of the Private Investigation Division. "Lucy, we have a situation." She raised an eyebrow. "Betrayal? Embezzlement? One of our senior executives moving money offshore." "Just like," Tommy started. "Just like Margaret," Lucy finished, slipping naturally into command mode. "Gather the team. Full surveillance. I want everything: financials, communications, relationships. Find the weak points." Tommy nodded. "Like your father always said, the rope is strongest when they hang themselves." "And Tommy," Lucy finished, channeling John's cold satisfaction, "make sure they understand this isn't just business. This is personal." Over dinner, the family discussed the situation. William offered legal strategies. Samantha suggested psychological pressure points. Even the grandchildren, those old enough to understand, contributed ideas. The Pierce family worked like a well-oiled machine, each member playing their part. Later, as Lucy tucked her sons into bed, Nathan looked up at her. "Mama, when someone betrays family, what do we do?" "We remember Grandpa John," she answered, smoothing his hair. "We are patient. We gather information. And we make them pay in ways they never imagine." Noah snuggled against her. "Like the story." "Exactly like the story. Now sleep, my little warriors. Tomorrow you'll learn more about justice." Alone in her study, Lucy opened her laptop and began planning. The new betrayal would be handled swiftly and completely. The executive, a man named Harrison Blake, would learn what generations before him had learned. The Pierce family never forgave, never forgot, and never failed to collect their debts. She drafted messages to her team, each instruction precise and merciless. The Ice Queen was in full effect. As she worked, she remembered her father's final words. "They may forget who I was, but they'll never forget what I did." With a smile, cruel and determined, Lucy prepared to add another chapter to the Pierce legacy. The dead man's shadow still walked, guiding his descendants in the sacred art of vengeance. 23 years had passed since John's death, but his truth remained constant. Loyalty was rewarded, betrayal was destroyed, and family came first, always. In Boston's financial district, Harrison Blake slept peacefully, unaware that morning would bring the first whispers of his destruction. Across the city, Tommy Russo III's team began their surveillance. At the federal courthouse, William reviewed legal strategies. At Pierce Security Headquarters, emergency protocols activated. The machine John built was flawless, unstoppable, eternal, and at its heart still beat the fierce determination of a man who'd survived his death and taught his children that justice, real justice, acknowledged no limits and no mercy. The dead man continued to walk, through his children, his grandchildren, and all who bore the Pierce name. His testament lived on, carved in the failures of those who learned too late that betrayal carried a price beyond comprehension. And somewhere in the space between dreams and waking, John Pierce smiled. The legacy continues.